Urbane. When you woke up this morning, did you purposely say, I'm going to confine myself to a box? Or do you just avoid putting any conscious thought into today? When you're busy going at it, literally or figuratively, do you ever find yourself pausing for a moment to realize what's going on? Or are you just reacting? When you hear the saying, may I have your attention please, do you continue as you were, or do you consider the information you're about to receive might actually be valuable? When I was growing up, my mother used to ask me to do things, and sometimes her reasoning was, because I said so. Looking back, I wish perhaps I took the time to pause, think, and consider the ramifications of my choices. Good Thursday to you. Today is Thursday, September 22nd, 2016. This is episode number 9 of Pause, Think, and Consider. I want to thank everybody for turning out and listening today. For those of you that have liked us on Facebook, maybe you haven't, please go to Facebook. You can search for us, Pause, Think, Consider. Like us on our page, and then you, along with everybody else, can share your favorite episode that you've heard so far of Pause, Think, Consider. Maybe it's this one. Maybe this is the first episode you've heard. Maybe you've been with us since episode number 1. Please go on and share your favorite episode on our Facebook page, Pause, Think, Consider. Today, I want to talk about the topic of imagination. For all the information and notes about today's topic, pausethinkconsider.com/imagination. I want to start off by telling a story. A story of a little boy by the name of Jesse Liebman. Yes, when I was growing up, I used to go to my grandparents' house every weekend. They lived in Woodburn, Oregon, about 45 minutes away from my parents' house, and we would go there every weekend. We'd go on Friday night, be there for Saturday, and come home Sunday evening. And it was great. It was great getting to see my grandparents every single weekend. One of the things that I used to love doing, and basketball was always a huge part of my life. Loved basketball, loved watching it, loved playing it. And the story of the basketball hoop being built at my grandparents' house was I didn't have a basketball hoop, and I would play with a bucket. I would hang it. My grandfather had a shop that he was a master carpet man and had all sorts of tools and saws and always working on things. And so I hung one of his work buckets on the doorknob to his work shed and used that bucket to shoot baskets on because I love basketball. Well, I guess my grandmother got tired of washing the doors. Pink paint probably didn't go well with all the blotching black from all the soot that was all over my outdoor basketball. So magically, the next weekend I showed up, there was a basketball hoop out there. Well, I used to love playing on that basketball hoop. I'd be out there for hours upon hours. Come in for lunch and go back out. And even when it was raining, my grandmother would be like, it's raining. Doesn't matter. I've got my jacket on. I'm going to go play. So I have 2 sisters, both younger. But yet I'm very much an introvert. Despite having a podcast and being able to talk, one of the nicknames my mother had for me was Talking Man, because I was always talking, always asking questions, at times would just not shut up. And that comes to fruition in the story that I want to share today in relation to basketball and the basketball court. So one of my favorite things to do on the basketball court was I would literally, from watching all of the games NBC, the Sunday game on NBC, and playing basketball and watching college games and being very much enamored with the whole production, I would simulate that myself. And so I would come out the door with my basketball and I would go into the backyard. And I was the play-by-play, I was the sideline reporter, I was the referee, I was the players, and I had literally, it was all me, 100% me, nobody else, not my sisters, not friends, not anything, just me. And I would simulate and create and imagine, if you will, as if it was a game between two teams. So I would be in the backyard, on the deck in the backyard, and I'd be dribbling the ball. And I was the sideline reporter talking almost like a boxing event, talking to Team A. And here's Jesse Liebman at 4'6", 33 pounds, and last week scored 34 points. He's averaging a league best 23 points with 6 assists, and going up against his arch rival, whoever, Larry Johnson. And this is how they play, and different things, and commercials, and it was almost like an HBO sports spectacle, if you will. And that was all the preamble. Then finally I would come out and I would do starting lineups. And I'd be running through it. There was basically, in order to get from the backyard to the actual basketball court, there was kind of almost like a runway, if you will. A deck that went by the side of the house, through the carport, the underpass, and then there was the basketball hoop, which is at the top of the carport. And so I would do laps, if you will. And for every player for each team, I'd come out and I had a different announcement, a different song, and different mannerisms for this person and everything. So I did all this, and this was all the build-up. And then I started doing warm-ups. And I'm doing warm-ups, and then I'd be playing the game. And I would throw the ball up, and I'd be both teams, and I'd pass to myself, and I'd run over here and yelling and screaming, the play-by-play. And I would do this for hours. And my grandfather would always be like, "What in the hell are you doing?" He'd hear me running by. It sounded like a track meet was going by. He's like, "What in the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, Gramps, it's starting lineups." He's like, "Okay, whatever." And my grandmother would leave me alone until inevitably I can remember one time I, the simulated Jesse, got pissed at the referee and threw a ball at him. And of course, when you can't always simulate everything, so of course the ball, well, I remember that the ball went bouncing off the window and Grandma lost her mind. "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "Sorry, Grandma." It's like the guy got a technical foul. He threw the ball at the referee. He's like, "Well, I'm going to throw the ball at your teeth if you don't quit that out." So I did everything. And I use that to paint the picture of the imagination that I had as a kid. Another example that I had was when growing up, we got our first Dell computer. We had a computer, but this was like our first real upgrade to a big computer as a family. And I can remember we got it for Hanukkah, taking the box, huge box that it came in. The computer is much smaller now. This is big enough that I could literally fit in it with my sisters. And we took markers and we took crayons and we drew dials and everything on the inside. And I think I'd recently seen Apollo 13 or something like that. And so familiar with rocket ships, and my sister and I literally we would play every day. It was like for a week until I finally destroyed it, because like Apollo 13, the rocket ship blew up. And so that was the end of the box and the end of us playing rocket ship. But I use that because I think we are socially in a position where we are stunting our creativity. We are stunting our creativity. I look at some of my friends' kids who have cell phones and have laptops and have tablets. And this isn't to say that technology is stunting us, that is holding us back, because it is a blessing. There are so many things that I've been able to do and learn and create that I never could as a kid. But yet, with that comes the dangers of that we are, in my opinion, destroying our imaginations. We're not able to have original, complex, creative thoughts. And with that, we're not able to be open-minded. My favorite movie of all time, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Ironically, Gene Wilder, the late, great Gene Wilder, recently passed away. The star of two of my favorite movies of all time. Blazing Saddles, my favorite comedy, and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And it's always been since day one. In fact, kids, Saving Private Ryan, Gladiator, The Godfather. No, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I don't give a damn. If you ask what favorite movie of all time. Always. I used to watch Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory so much. And it was back in the VHS days, VCR, that my mother would know the number exactly. I'm just going to guesstimate that I went through 5 different VHS tapes. And if you know what I'm talking about, when you watch a VHS so many times that it starts getting grainy and you can't actually see the picture, I went through 5 separate VHS tapes for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I knew every line, every dance, every character growing up. Favorite. Absolute hands down favorite. And so I almost feel like it's a tribute to a certain degree to sing the last portion of Pure Imagination. And here's the beauty of audio enhancement, that this is probably going to help me. And if you want, please just skip ahead for 45 seconds or whatever. But I'm not going to do justice. Please, I'll link to it on the website, pausethinkconsider.com/imagination. Gene does it much better than I'm sure I will. But the end of Pure Imagination, I think, really points to some main points that I want to get to. So, without further ado, Pure Imagination. If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Wanna change the world? There's nothing to it. There's no life that I know to compare with pure imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be. Pure Imagination, Willy Wonka. Another way that you could look at imagination, I think those are all connected words. Imagination, similar to creativity, similar to originality, similar to open-mindedness. Imagination equals creativity, equals originality, equals open-mindedness. And I consider myself personally somebody that is very balanced. When you look at left brain, right brain, and I'll link to an article that describes these in better detail. Left brain, right brain. Left brain being more analytical, numbers. Right brain being more creative, abstract. And I know I am very much a data person. I love numbers. Math, up until a certain point, was my favorite subject in school. But then I also love music. And I think it'd be hard to say, based on the childhood that I had and the stories that I share today to say that I don't have some semblance of a right brain and utilize that. But I think it's also fair to say that some people are just better than others. They are intrinsically more creative. And I believe it comes down to 3 traits, 3 specific things that we can point to as to why they are more creative. Number 1, I believe they're bigger risk takers. They are willing to roll the dice more. Because with being original, with being creative, being open-minded, it goes along with taking risks. And the people that are willing to take risks more often, maybe not necessarily the size of like, I am going to put down my entire life savings on this bet. It's a big risk taker, big risk. I don't know that I'd really say that's creative. Probably original. Yeah, maybe. It's open-minded for sure, but I think it's just people that are willing and more often to take risks. I associate that to people that are creative. They're open-minded. Intrinsically more creative than somebody who isn't willing to take as many risks. With that goes hand in hand eliminating, decreasing the fear of failure. The fear of failure can be crippling to individuals. Crippling to the point that we are unwilling to think outside the box, have any sort of creativity, be original, be open-minded. And those individuals that are able to put that aside, that are able to eliminate that fear of failure, in my opinion, are much more successful at being creative. They're much more naturally creative than somebody that is unwilling to take risks because of failure. And finally, blocking out all other critiques and input. Blocking out all other critiques and input. If you are able to take risks, eliminate the fear of failure, and then block out the critiques or input, your originality, your ability to be creative and to be open-minded is going to be so much more expansive than somebody that holds himself back. It's almost like wearing a seatbelt on an airplane and then opening up that seatbelt and getting up and walking off the plane. That free spirit, that freeness of not being held back can be so liberating that it's just in individuals that I've seen that I consider extremely creative individuals. Those are the 3 traits that I've identified with them as to why they're so much more creative than other individuals. So, if we're trying to identify how to be more creative, how to increase our level of imagination, a couple of outside sources have some opinions, have some thoughts. They're good. I would go check them out. Operation Meditation has 10 ways to discover imagination creativity. Lifehack.org, 10 ways to ignite your imagination and accomplish big things. Big things. Finally, Launch Your Genius, 7 steps to unleashing imagination. So I'd go check those out. Link to it, pausethinkconsider.com/imagination. Here is my personal take, my personal opinion. And I want to try and make this as simplistic as possible to help improve our imagination. And I think it's necessary. I think we could all be better at improving our imagination because Like the example I gave of playing basketball in the driveway. Without that type or level of creativity and originality, everything would be the same. There would be no other perspective. We would just, and I've said this before, don't be a goddamn sheep. Have some original thoughts. Your thoughts are your thoughts. There is no right or wrong opinion. Just be willing to have them. Be creative. Be original. We can have influences, but it still can be an original thought. And so, 3 steps, I believe, to improving, that we could all improve our imagination. The first one is to spend some time in thought or a daydream. And to exemplify this, I want to use my favorite quote. My favorite quote of all time by Jim Valvano. He is the late, great former coach of NC State, the Wolfpack men's basketball team. And he gave this speech at the ESPYs several years ago. One of, if not my favorite speeches I've ever heard. And every time I hear it, I'm basically moved to tears. And it's something that has always stuck with me. Jean actually got me great gift. She actually inscribed this quote on a bottle for me that I have on my desk that I look at every day. I actually look at every episode that I do of this podcast. And so what Jim says in this speech, he's essentially being recognized, given an award. He has at the time, he has cancer, which eventually he passes away from as a result. But in it, to take this excerpt, my favorite part of the speech is when people say to me, how do you get through life each day? It's the same thing. To me, there are 3 things we should all do every day. We should do this every day of our lives. Number 1 is laugh. You should laugh every day. Number 2 is think. You should spend some time in thought. Number 3, you should have your emotions move to tears. Could be happiness or joy. But think about it. If you laugh, you think, and you cry, that's a full day. That's a heck of a day. You do that 7 days a week, you're going to have something special. And to capitalize on that, to piggyback what Jim Valvano said, should spend some time in thought. Daydream. And I believe, along with him, we should do this every day. As I've said before on this program, whenever I drive, I don't listen to music anymore. It is like my head is in a concert. I am in stereo of thoughts going on in my head. And maybe that's not the most productive place to do it. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of places that I daydream. But I've just found that when I'm driving, specifically, that my mind can often get lost. And that's a time that I spend in thought pretty religiously. And I oftentimes will get so lost in those thoughts that I'm sort of on autopilot, if you will, and just driving down the road. I don't necessarily recommend that, but that same essence of thought, that same going through that process and experiencing that to the degree in which you lose track of time is what I'm preaching and what I'm saying that we need to try and accomplish. And we should do that every day. And I think the importance with it is getting lost in time. To say, all right, Jesse, I'm going to spend some time in thought. I'm going to set my watch for 10 minutes, and when it beeps, my thoughts are over. No. That's not That's not allowing yourself to daydream. It's not allowing yourself to really break down the barriers that you have or you're experiencing in your life. And that's what's necessary in order for you to really improve upon your imagination. So every day, get completely lost. It doesn't matter how much. Maybe it is 10 minutes. Maybe you are sitting in your chair at work and you just get lost in your thoughts. And you don't realize how long you've been sitting there. Maybe it's only 5 minutes. But spending some time just thinking, daydreaming. It could be about anything. But in doing that, it is, in my opinion, improving and automatically extending that imagination. So with that, I also believe we need to dream. And we need to dream big. Now, dreams are different than goals. Goals, in my personal belief, goals are things that are realistic, that are tangible, that we can accomplish. Dreams, not necessarily. They are things that feel, that seem virtually impossible, that would be amazing at that point in our life to get and to achieve. Those are the things I'm talking about. We need to dream, and we need to dream big. And what I've always found is it's so much better, and it feels so much more real when you can confide and tell someone your dream. But it's got to be somebody you trust. We all have people in our lives that are judging, or maybe not the most supportive in the world, but they give you that truth serum. And I think everybody needs somebody that's willing to give us our truth serum. And so if we're analyzing our squad, our circle, our group of people, you need, well, at least 2 people. You need somebody that's going to give it to you honestly. And then you need that supportive person, the number one fan, the person that anything you say, oh yeah, Jesse, you can do it. I think that's a great idea. You need somebody like that. That's the person who you go to with your dreams. That's the person that you confide what your dreams are. And you need to do that, because I've heard so many different stories of people that have things on their chest, and it just feels so much better to get it off. And it feels so much more like reality. And so when you dream, if you just hold it internally, you just hold it inside yourself, it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel like it might actually be possible. It feels so much better to share your dreams with somebody. I would highly recommend that you dream, and you dream big. And finally, you need to experience or do something creative at least once a week. Leaving it open-ended in terms of what that physical thing is, but you need to experience or do something creative at least once a week, aside from your daily time and thought. This is physically doing something or experiencing something creative. I'm leaving it very open-ended. This could be going and listening to live music. This could be painting, taking a class, whatever. The actual task is irrelevant. But if we're focusing and we're improving that imagination, if we are experiencing and doing something creative at least once a week, we're never going to lose that. We're never going to lose that little boy in the driveway who came up with an entire production for a basketball game. Not only his mind, but then went out and physically did it. You're never going to lose that little girl that built the spaceship and played with it with her brother and rolled around and it exploded and still made it down to the ground safely. Just because we go off into adulthood, just because we get older, doesn't mean we need to lose that imagination. Doesn't mean we need to lose our creativity. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be original or open-minded. And so, to recap, we talked about the story of playing basketball in the driveway. How today kids are enamored, and while technology is great, it is potentially stunting our children or our ability to be creative and to leverage our imagination. You got to listen to me butcher Pure Imagination from Willy Wonka and Gene Wilder, and then talked about that some people are just intrinsically more creative than others. That's because they're bigger risk takers. They eliminate the fear of failure. They block out other critiques and input. Examples would be like an entrepreneur. Those are definitely creative people. They're huge risk takers. They block out that fear of failure, and they don't listen to the noise. And there's a couple different sources that provide in terms of ways to increase that imagination outside of my own suggestions. Operation Meditation, 10 ways to increase imagination creatively. Article from lifehack.org and launchyourgenius.com. But my specific suggestions being spend some time in thought, as Jim Valvano would say, get completely lost in time. Do it to the point where you are daydreaming and you lose track of time, no matter how long it is, and do this every single day. Then dream and dream big. Confide in somebody your dream that you really trust, that is supportive, that is not going to be judgmental of you. And finally, experience and do something creative at least once a week, no matter what it is. I want to thank you all for listening today. Please check out the website at pausethinkconsider.com/imagination. Everybody go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/pause.think.consider, and please share with everybody your favorite episode that you've heard so far. Maybe it's imagination. Maybe it's the art of listening. Maybe it's self-awareness. Please share with that. And I look forward to talking to you all tomorrow on Pause, Think, Consider.